remarks. I grew up here in Knoxville. I went to public high school, Young High School, which is now the Kroger's on Chapman Highway. I'm a grandmother and a mother. My father served in the Navy during World War II. My grandfather served in the infantry during World War I. My grandmother's brother died on the battlefield in France and is buried there during World War I. My brother has served for 37 years in the Air National Guard, and my young son David served in the Navy. So I do want to honor the veterans today, and they're also very special to me. And most importantly, my husband Bob is a disabled veteran from the Vietnam era. I have gotten so much today out of listening to all the people who are speaking from their hearts about what is going on here in America. I get a little nervous speaking extemporaneously, so last night I wrote some remarks that I'd like to share with you. We gather here today in solidarity with our brothers and sisters at Occupy Wall Street in New York, and with tens of thousands of people in hundreds of cities around the world. We gather to speak as one voice to the Wall Street bankers who wrecked our economy, to the CEOs and board members of multinational corporations who have carelessly depleted our natural resources, polluted our environment, and sent our jobs overseas. We speak as one voice to our elected officials who prostitute themselves to corporate lobbyists who fund their re-election campaigns. It is time for a fundamental shift in our collective consciousness, a change in our values as a nation and as members of the human race. Those of us who are drawn to this cause have responded to an inner urging, and I believe it will take great courage in the coming days ahead to dare to hold a vision of equality, of justice, of peace, hope, and prosperity for the future of humanity. As I have pondered the meaning of courage, I've been reflecting on those heroes throughout history who I believe have exemplified real courage. I've thought about spiritual leaders like Reverend Martin Luther King, who provided a nonviolent, truly Christian example of leadership, willing to suffer the indignity of imprisonment for the ultimate goal of racial equality. And Mohandas Gandhi, who led his people to nonviolently oppose imperial rule in India. And to me, the single most greatest quality of these men that they embodied was courage. The courage to face persecution for a higher noble goal, to stand in their truth for what they believed in. In the words of Robert Kennedy, the future does not belong to those who are content with today, apathetic toward common problems and their fellow men alike, timid and fearful in the face of bold projects and new ideas. Rather, it belongs to those who can blend passion, reason, and courage in a personal commitment to the ideals of American society. Throughout our history, men and women have had to stand up to injustice. The abolitionists who opposed slavery struggled for almost 90 years, and it took a civil war to end slavery. Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony were founders of the suffragist movement, but they never enjoyed the privilege of voting. But it was because of their courage that I can now vote, and Knoxville can be proud of electing our first woman mayor. The Industrial Revolution brought about significant progress to America and tremendous prosperity to the robber barons of the 19th century. And it was very similar to today. Wealth was concentrated in the hands of the few. Working conditions were deplorable. There were no labor laws, and unions were outlawed. Our political process was corrupt from the local level to the highest institutions. Men were assaulted and many were killed for trying to form labor unions. There was no social safety net, no help for those who suffered with starvation and poverty. And the progressive era ushered in reforms, but it was a long, bloody, arduous battle. Over the past 50 years, many of the changes brought about by the progressive era of the previous century have been systematically overturned by corporate interests. In his keynote address to the Public Citizen 40th Anniversary Gala in Washington, D.C., Bill Moyers talked about the issues that unite us here today. He suggested that evidence abounds that large inequalities undermine community life, reduces trust among citizens, and increases violence. In one major study from data collected over 30 years, the most consistent predictor of mental illness, infant mortality, educational achievements, teenage birth, homicide, and incarceration is economic inequality. And as Nobel laureate Kenneth Arrow has written, vast inequalities of income weakens a society's sense of mutual concern. The sense that we are all members of the social order is vital to the meaning of civilization. Mr. Moyers also pointed out the concerted effort that began in the 1970s to fund think tanks, media outlets, PACs, and fund lobbyists who represented corporate interests. And he declared, our politicians are money launderers in the trafficking of power and policy.
Yeah.
We are indeed at a critical juncture, and it is time that working people stand up to the moneyed interests of Wall Street and the boardrooms of giant corporations and say, enough is enough. Our priorities as a nation have become skewed to reflect the wants and wishes of those with wealth and power who care nothing about the average citizens of our country. The corporate-controlled media has even convinced many people that the problems that face America are caused by lazy poor people who want handouts, and the financial regulations and environmental regulations, that they're the problem. Most of the protections that were gained during the Progressive era 100 years ago have been systematically repealed. In his prophetic farewell address, President Dwight Eisenhower cautioned us. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together. He made that address 50 years ago. We're now at a turning point in modern history. Occupy Knoxville has an important role to play at this auspicious moment. We must have the courage to commit ourselves to the vision we share, that our children and grandchildren can live and love and grow in a community that reflects the values so dear to us. Years ago, I had a bumper sticker that read, "If the people will lead, the leaders will follow." We are planting seeds of peace, of love, of hope, of prosperity. We may not see the fruits of our labor in this lifetime, but labor we must. We are planting seeds for a new tomorrow, seeds that we pray will blossom one day in a new era of peace and prosperity for all people. We are the 99%.